Unforgiveness is like carrying a massive emotional weapon that you turn upon yourself while the other person is out walking around living their life.
Welcome to Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast, a space for healing conversations, honest stories, and the courage it takes to begin again. Today's episode is titled Forgiveness, Survival, and the Courage to Begin Again, and it speaks directly to anyone who has had to grow up too fast, survive the unimaginable, or find strength in the aftermath of pain. We're joined by Anjalia McGoldrick, a licensed professional counselor, metaphysician, hypnotherapist, entrepreneur, and international award-winning author. Angelia's journey began as a teen mother navigating life on her own, facing abuse, poverty, and trauma at a young age. Through resilience and determination, she transformed adversity into purpose, breaking cycles, reclaiming her voice, and becoming a powerful advocate for healing. Today, Angelia brings both professional expertise and lived experience into her work, helping others walk the path of forgiveness, emotional healing, and renewal with compassion and clarity. If you've ever wondered how forgiveness fits into survival or how to begin again after hardship, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome, Anjalia McGoldrick. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you to Lisa for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on as a guest on Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast. I'm really excited to have you on podcast family. I always say that this is going to be a dynamic conversation, but again, this is going to be a dynamic conversation because Angelia is able to connect with the podcast family in many ways. So, the name of today's episode is Forgiveness, Survival, and the Courage to Begin Again. Let's just get right on into it. So, Angelia, please tell me about yourself.
To Lisa, thank you again for having me on the show. My name is Anjalia McGoldrick, and I'm a psychotherapist, a metaphysician, a hypnotherapist, and a new author of The Child I Left Behind, A Mother's Journey Toward Healing and Forgiveness. And I have spent a lot of years healing on my own, walking through that journey from some difficulties that occurred when I was young, and really have a passion for giving back and helping others, and really needed to write this book for my own healing and to also help others who have had difficulties and struggles in their life.
Angelia, thank you so much for that information that you shared with us. What led you to becoming a psychotherapist?
To Lisa, I was catapulted into adulthood at a very young age. I was pregnant by the time I was 13 to get out of an abusive home. And by the time I was 14, I was out in the world in an abusive relationship as a young mother. And I only escaped that relationship with my life at 16 years old. I was faced with some very difficult decisions out of desperation and survival to leave my child behind with her grandmother and face the world alone with many obstacles. And it was a therapist that came along that helped me to recognize that the past doesn't define me, that I can heal from the wounds of the past and begin again. And it was through the love and nurturing and the compassion of this therapist that really helped me to begin my life again. And I never forgot that. And I had a passion as I grew and healed to give back to others. And being a therapist was something that I just knew was my calling.
Wow, that's beautiful. So while life was lifing and you were on your journey to self-healing, you identified the fact that this is something that you would like to carry on and help others with.
Absolutely. I just knew that I had to give back. I had been through so much trauma and turmoil, so many difficulties, and had to overcome so many obstacles to overcome poverty and abuse. And I saw how beneficial therapy was for me. And I knew that there were so many out there that also had been through difficulties and struggles. And I just knew that was my calling and my passion. And And I went down a lot of paths. I became an entrepreneur first and a real estate investor, and went to the University of Michigan and became a dental hygienist. And just all of those things trying to get out of poverty, knowing that having an education and also owning a business was definitely a pathway out of poverty. And in my early 30s, I found myself, after having overcome a lot and accomplishing so many things, just this yearning to fulfill this deep need to help others. And so I went back to grad school and became a psychotherapist and opened my own counseling and wellness center. And now I have 17 therapists that work for me in a beautiful counseling center here in Southwest Virginia. And it's rewarding to be able to help others who are also struggling through trauma and difficulties that they've been through in their life, and to also help professionals to find their way as entrepreneurs.
That's amazing. That's amazing. As I was reading about your background, I thought you would be a great fit for the podcast family and this audience, because in order for you to have achieved as much as you have achieved, the key component in your journey has been forgiveness.
Yes.
And thinking about the podcast family and the caregivers, as a caregiver, usually speaking, we're the ones who take on everything. And you can even find yourself in a situation where you're providing care for a loved one who may not have treated you right, a loved one who you didn't have the best relationship with. And on top of all of that, dealing with the other obstacles that you face while you're the one that's providing care for your loved one. And that's dealing with various confrontations and disagreements and having to forgive those people who don't see the everyday journey that you go through with the person that you're caring for, your loved one. I would like to talk about forgiveness and how you were able to obtain it through your journey as it pertains to the book that you've written on your life's journey.
Yes. The child I left behind, a mother's journey toward healing and forgiveness, definitely was a big part of my healing. And I had been through an awful lot. My parents divorced when I was 9, and my mom, she was a young mother and ended up in an abusive relationship and had to work and was gone an awful lot. And I became a parentified child and ended up being a mother to my mother when I too was still just a child and needed the love and support, and really didn't get it. And she wasn't home a lot. She worked a lot. And when she was just so emotionally drained, she didn't have a lot to give to me. And I ended up getting pregnant to get out of an abusive home. Her boyfriend was very abusive to me and to her and my younger brother. And for years, I tried to talk to my mom and help her understand that this guy needed to go. She herself, wounded, just didn't have the strength to get out of that abusive relationship. So I ended up meeting a guy who was a few years older than me and ended up getting pregnant, thinking this was the answer to my problems. But of course, generational wounds repeat themselves. And so I ended up in a really abusive relationship, like I said, that I only escaped with my life as a very young mother myself. And when my daughter was 6 months old, my mother finally got out of the relationship she was in and had met a new man, and he offered to move her out to the suburbs. We lived in the ghettos of Detroit, but I wasn't invited. And so at 14 years old, she came to me. She offered me $200 and the furniture in my bedroom and a couch, and she wished me well. And so I had to go out on my own and get a job and figure out how to navigate the situation I was in. And
Question:
yeah,
how old were you?
I was 14.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm from Michigan originally, and you caught my attention when you said University of Michigan because my alma mater is Michigan State University. So
Okay.
I like, what part of Michigan?
So I grew up in Southwest Detroit.
Okay, yes, that's where my family is from.
Yeah,
Wow.
isn't that something? Yeah, so we lived down on Verner and Clark and down in that area near the Renaissance Center, downtown Detroit. And she had been offered an opportunity to get out, and this guy wasn't fond of me, and I just, at the time, I had been through an awful lot over the many years that my parents had separated and divorced, and he didn't invite me to come. And so I ended up out in the world on my own and moved in with my boyfriend was 17 and I was 14, and he was about to turn 18, and we got our own apartment. And again, the abuse started right away. And after many years of enduring that, I finally escaped that relationship with just my life. And I write about that in my book, The Child I Left Behind, and the struggles that I went through and the difficult decision that I made to leave my child behind with his mother, who was retired and was able to care for her. And I carried a scarlet letter on my heart for many years of just guilt and shame. As a mother, it was just one of those decisions that was very difficult to make, and but it was the only decision I had at the time. And my mom wasn't there for me. I didn't have any parents that were there to help me, and I had to, that old saying, that either I'm going to do it, it's up to me if it's going to be, or I'm going to end up in worse shape. And I got busy working. I got busy studying for my GED. I'd only finished the 8th grade, and I knew that education and people who own businesses seem to do much better than folks that were in my situation. So I started cleaning houses and really started working on getting my life together. And I did carry a lot of unforgiveness and towards my daughter's dad and towards my mother for many years. And but I learned along the way through reading books on empowerment and self help. And Wayne Dyer was a big, huge influence in my life. And he taught me about forgiveness when I was very young. I was 17, 18 years old. And he said that unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person suffers. And I realized that here I am carrying all of this unforgiveness especially towards my mother. And what I realized is that unforgiveness only hurts the one that carries it. And I know my mom did the very best that she knew how at the time. She too was a teen mom. Her mother was a teen mother. And we just were continuing a generational pattern that was unhealthy, but that's what we knew, and that's what we often do. And through doing my own work and also healing myself and working on that, I was able to recognize that and find forgiveness for her. And then later, Talissa, I my mother came down with cancer, and she needed help. My older sister had come back into her life when she was 16 years old, and she took care of my sister, but she needed a lot of help. I know I want to have a lot of compassion. I do have a lot of compassion for those that take care of their parents or those people that have harmed them. Oftentimes we end up back in that role. And I too ended up back in that same place. And while she was suffering and going through chemo and doing all the things that are necessary for her treatment, I endured a lot. And what it does is it puts us, as the child that was in the situation, in an abusive situation, or in a situation where you didn't have someone who was supporting you, you end up in a role where you're reliving a lot of that, the messages and a lot of the trauma that you endured when you were young. And, so you get re-triggered and you find yourself repeating some of the same patterns or noticing things coming up. And what I was able to do, because I had learned so much along the way, is to continuously remind myself that my mom did the best she could. She's struggling now. She needs my help. And anytime I did get triggered or those pains or repeated patterns came up, I had to slow down and take a moment to distance myself and take some time to really nurture the inner child that was wounded inside of me, and to be able to say, "Oh, honey, oh, dear, dear." Oftentimes we're taking care of someone who didn't take care of us. And so we often find ourselves in a place of resentment or anger that we never had the time or the space to deal with. So it's really important for those of you that are taking care of your parent or someone who harmed you to really recognize where you are and to acknowledge your feelings and to really take time to really go within and to give yourself some time and space to feel the feeling, notice what's coming up, and to go back in and nurture that little inner child with love and compassion.
That's pretty deep. If I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying, and I've heard this said so many times, the majority of people, they do the best that they can with the information that they have at the time.
Absolutely.
And you, as an adult, you were able to take a step back and look at it with an adult lens understanding that your mother was a mother when she was a teenager, and her mother was the same. It was the same thing, and in part, the cycle kind of continued.
Yes,
But you were actually able to break away from that through first therapy and really learning about yourself and going through your healing journey. And then you were again confronted by some of the same feelings, issues, etc., that you experienced during your childhood when your mother needed you as a caregiver.
absolutely.
And what you did is understanding that your mom may not have been capable of, even at that point as an adult, providing you with the nourishment that you needed. You provided that nourishment for yourself, for your inner child that needed it.
Absolutely. My mother she never did counseling. She never was able to heal some of those deep wounds. Her mother died when she was 15. Her father died when she was 3. She came from a large family from the coal fields of Kentucky in dire poverty. And she got married to my dad at a very young age. She was 15 years old. And she did those things out of survival. Of course, the relationship didn't work, and she had 4 children by the time she was in her late 20s. And then she ended up out in the world on her own, a lot like me, and was in her survival mode. And she just really did the best she could. And I was able to recognize that. But it was because of my healing journey, because I was willing to do the work and to look at things and to examine my life and to examine her life and to say, how did this happen? How did I end up here? And to really be able to see hurt people even when they don't mean to. And we repeat the patterns of the past, and we continue to do that until we do the work to heal that and to actually take the time to look at it. And so often, Talisa, people don't want to feel the pain again, so they run from it, they hide it, they squash it down and bury it, or they medicate it with alcohol, drugs, workaholism, staying busy, doing all these other things. And they believe that if they don't feel the feelings, if they ignore the feelings, that they'll go away. But our inner wounded child is always there to remind us that they're still down there hurting. And it isn't until we turn within and go down there and find that little one and let them know they're not alone and give them a voice, acknowledge their pain, their hurt, their guilt and their shame, and to give them that love and nurturing that they needed, that they didn't get when they needed it most, oftentimes when they're a child. And our inner child is with us throughout our lives. So we can be hurt throughout every age that we go through. And those are parts of us that are in there that are waiting for us to come back and find them. It's us that they're looking for. It's me that my inner child was looking for. It was the needs that she didn't get met and the voice that didn't get heard. And oftentimes, because we're wounded, we're in this situation when things are going wrong and things are dysfunctional and we're going through abuse or trauma, that it's not safe to feel our feelings. It's not safe to ask for what we need. And so we often do bury that, and we turn on ourselves, and we often find ourselves as our own inner critic because we don't have a voice to be able to speak up and say what we need or to be angry. And so we carry that with us until we take the time to slow down enough to turn within and find that little one and say, oh, honey, I see you. I hear you. What are you needing right now? And if you'll slow down long enough to listen, your inner child will let you know. Oftentimes they just need to be heard. They just need to be acknowledged and recognized that they're in pain and that they feel helpless or hurt or they feel ashamed or they feel like there's no one there for them. And then you can go in and nurture that little one and say, oh, honey, I'm here. I'm always going to be here for you. And I know that sounds really simple to Lisa, but it really takes some work to really sit still long enough to go within and listen to that part of ourself and find out where it's holding that pain in our body. The body keeps the score and it knows. And oftentimes we bury that and it ends up turning into dis-ease and discomfort. And until we go in there and find those parts and give it a voice and give it the space that it needs to be heard and to heal that part. And it's a process, it's a journey. So sometimes we get little pieces of it or parts of it, and then it triggers and comes back up again. And we just got to keep going back in and giving that little one just the love and nurturing that it needs.
Beautifully said. There's so many golden nuggets of wisdom that you dropped through your entire story of what you just shared. And podcast family, you all know that I am a huge advocate as it pertains to therapy. One of the things she stated was that you have to be ready to do the work. When you're ready to do the work, you may not know how to do the work. And that's fine because we're not supposed to know everything. However, there are resources out here to help you do the work. And therapy is one of the great resources that you can use because, as Anjalia stated, this is something that even helped her throughout her life and had a huge impact, so much so that she decided to become a psychotherapist. And it also helped her to heal herself along her journey. We all have that inner child, as you said, Angelia, and I resonate with that. And understanding that everyone wasn't able to give you that love and that comfort or whatever you needed when you were a child, but they did the best that they could. That comes with knowledge, that comes with acceptance, that even comes with forgiveness. And then it's focusing on yourself so that you can become the better version of you. Then, even when you stated, when you hold on to it and you push it underneath the rug or you try to go forward, it could turn into dis-ease, which turns into disease within our body because we're not made to hold on to those type of negative things. And it's all a part of forgiveness. So you've been through that journey with your mother. Before moving forward, let me ask you this. Were you able to have a conversation with your mom about how you felt and what transpired when you were a child? And if so, how did that go?
Yeah, I was. Talisa, we went on a trip. My sister and I took my mom on a trip to Sedona, and we did just a healing journey up there with just some different services through a shaman. And I was able to talk to her about the things that I went through because she had so much guilt and shame, which I think contributed to her cancer. She had ovarian cancer, which is our womb, our mother's womb. And she just really, it was difficult to talk with her about it because she just, it just really shut her down. And she really just carried so much guilt and shame from the decisions that she made. And I let her know that I forgave her, that I loved her. And I know that she did the best that she could. And she was able to acknowledge that she did do the very best she could. And she did have a difficult life herself. And I know that helped her. And to know that I love her and that I don't hold blame or I'm not angry, and that we all make mistakes, and that even myself, I've made a ton of mistakes myself as a mother. And I think it's in acknowledging that truth and being able to share your feelings with one another that is so powerful. And some parents or some people that have hurt you can hear that, but oftentimes they can't. And one of the things that we often do is that we hope that we can talk to the person that hurt us and reconcile. But forgiveness isn't about that. Forgiveness is about letting go, being able to acknowledge the pain, recognize it, knowing that you did the best that you could do at the time, recognizing that hurt people, even when they don't mean to. And oftentimes we don't get reconciliation. Oftentimes we'll never get an apology. Oftentimes people aren't willing to take responsibility for what they did to you. And so forgiveness isn't about reconciliation. Forgiveness is about, it's a gift to yourself. Unforgiveness is like carrying a massive emotional weapon that you turn upon yourself while the other person is out walking around living their life. And forgiveness is a path to freedom for you. And with that is being able to turn within and recognizing the wounds, the trauma, the pain, the suffering that you went through, and naming it and acknowledging it and recognizing where you've blamed yourself or where you've turned on yourself and became your own inner critic and carried guilt and shame or blame toward your own self, and recognizing that this unforgiveness is only hurting you, and that by turning within and finding those parts and giving them a name, taking responsibility for what was yours, and recognizing that you did the best that you could at the time, recognizing what others have done to you, naming it, claiming it, even writing a letter to the person that harmed you, to be able to say what you couldn't say to them, recognizing what you went through, acknowledging the pain, the anger, the feelings, the emotions, and even the unforgiveness. And then taking that letter in a ceremonial way and burning it, burying it, whatever it is that is helpful to you. Burning it is a really beautiful ceremonial way to release it and see the smoke going up, and allowing our spiritual guides, angels, guardians, God, whatever it is that you follow, just to take that, release that, and to take that from you. And as often as you need to do that work, as often as you need to write the letters, or write the letters to yourself, and acknowledging how strong you were to get through those things, what you were able to do to survive. When we're in survival mode, we are doing the very best that we can to get through day by day or moment by moment sometimes. And we need to acknowledge that inner strength and to give a voice to that. So often we don't live in our truth. We don't stand in our truth. Too often we're afraid or we're ashamed. But that little inner child, that wounded part, needs to be heard and acknowledged. And when we can turn within and find that voice and let her to be seen, or him to be seen and heard, it just really empowers you and gives you a pathway forward to freedom. Forgiveness is the greatest gift that we can ever give ourselves, a gift of freedom.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I really resonate with that. I'll share this with you, Angelia, as well as the podcast family, because I don't know that I did. The very first therapist that I had after my mother passed, you all know I've shared my story so many times. For the ones that may be new, I took care of my mother who was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in November of 2016. That's when she was diagnosed out of nowhere. Long story short, I was able to move her down south. She was from Metro Detroit. I was able to move her down south, and I was taking care of her. But I encountered a lot of things while I was taking care of her, dealing with family members, people who have a very high significant level of DNA to me. And so there was a lot that happened. There were things that really hurt my mother. For an example, she had a brother. It was her favorite brother. And here's my mom. She's dying of stage 4 breast cancer. And he never once called to check on her. Never once called. So I remember she picked up her phone and she said, "Oh, I miss," just like this. She was in so much pain. She said, "Oh, I miss my brother. I miss my brother. I'm going to call my brother." And I said, "Mom," I said, "let him call you." I said, "if he cares, he'll call you. Let him call you." Because my mother was always the one, she was the baby out of 6. And she was the one that was always caring, giving, going. But an observation of her siblings, they did not return that. It wasn't returned. So he didn't call, and it really hurt her. So thinking about just that and some other things I had went through, my therapist told me at the time, she said, "Lisa, you should write a letter addressing how you felt." And then she said, "Write a letter." And she said, "when you're done, put it in an envelope and seal it, put it in your Bible." I started thinking about the assignment that I was given. And again, I was in my early 30s. And I thought to myself, I said, I'm grown. I'm going to let these people know how I feel. See, where I came from, my upbringing was this: adults could be wrong as two left shoes. However, as the child, you didn't have the right to speak up.
Right.
At most, what I was permitted to do was talk to my mother about it, and she would take care of it. But I could not stand up to these adults. Here's the thing: I was grown. And I stopped operating in that, I call it nonsense and carrying on, when I turned 18 and went away to college. But as it pertained to my mother, any connection to my mother, I stopped and I said, okay, I'll operate in this because this is how I was brought up. And I thought it was the right thing to do to show respect to my mother. So when I wrote this letter, I wrote a letter and I wrote a text. One letter went out to her favorite brother. And in the letter, I expressed how I felt because I kept trying to call, but when I called, they would hang up on me. And so I'm down south. I couldn't have this conversation with them. So I talked to a cousin of mine. She permitted me to use her address from a different state, and I addressed it to the grandchild. But I had a note that just says, "Give this to your grandfather," because that's who it was for. I just wanted the letter to get to them. It didn't have anything to do with the child at all. It was about them and what they did and their behavior and how it hurt my mother and how it angered me. And from that, I was hoping to get some level of accountability,
Right.
but there was no level of accountability.
No.
Instead, I was told by one of the siblings was that he hoped that he didn't want his pastor to find out about his behavior. And so that angered and hurt me even more because now my mother was gone.
Right.
I had to learn how to forgive this relative. The majority of my mother's siblings, they're all gone. Only one is left within a very short time period. But I had to learn how to forgive them. Within that podcast family, I had to learn how to forgive the dead
Right.
because now they're gone and there's absolutely no chance of reconciliation of a
Right.
relationship. So being able to nurture myself, being able to stand in my truth, being able to call the thing and move forward just accordingly has helped. And therapy has helped me with that. So I do forgive all of them. My mother had one of her siblings, for an example. My mother wasn't even gone for 7 days yet, hadn't even been in heaven for seven days human time. And she was talking about moving into the house that I had built for my mom. And I even when I told this relative, my mother's sibling, hey, my mother just passed. I'm not in a place where I'm able to receive anyone talking about their new beginning and move because she's, oh, your mother said it's beautiful down there, and I'm just gonna move in there, and that's gonna be my new life, and it's gonna be my new beginning, and I'm gonna do. And I was just like, where is the compassion and the sympathy for me? I took care of everything on my own from my mother's cremation to the building of the house to nurses, CNAs. I took care of everything. No one offered me anything, not even 10 cents, but this person was looking to move into the house
Yeah.
that I built for my mom and thought that I was going to take on the role of caregiver for them.
Mm.
I was very upset and I was operating in this let me communicate how I feel. And so I did that. And then later on, I had to get to a place where I was able to really nurture myself and also forgive that sibling too, in which I was able to have actually a conversation with them and just apologize for how direct I was. I didn't use profanity, by the way, because I'm not. People who know me knows that I'm not good with profanity, so I don't use it. I don't know how to make the words flow smoothly. I don't, so I don't use it. But I was able to get through it, and I was able to forgive. So I really resonate with you with that. And I'm sure that not only me, but the podcast family, there are many of us that have experienced some level of drama, turmoil, adversity that has caused us pain and a level of unforgiveness within our hearts. So really listening to Anjalia and her process and just the beautiful golden nuggets of wisdom that she's sharing, I believe will help you because what she said are steps that I personally had to take with my healing journey to get to where I am today. So thank you for that, Angelia.
But you're very welcome. You had so many golden little nuggets yourself there. And if it's okay, I'd like to just say that oftentimes we do want to go back and try to find recognition or acknowledgement. And so often we don't get it. And being able to write a letter that sometimes we never send, it's just really forgiveness is for us. It's not for the other person. And sometimes being able to take responsibility for what is ours, our feelings, especially our hurt, our anger, and recognizing that we may never get what we're looking for from the other person. And that's okay because forgiveness isn't for them. Forgiveness is for ourselves, for you. and being able to just find some ways. Forgiveness is a practice. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a daily, moment by moment practice of being able to come back in and acknowledge what you're feeling, acknowledge the hurt, acknowledge the pain, the injustices, the harm, the pain that you had gone through, being alone, not having anyone, being able to, whatever is coming up for you, being able to take time to label it, acknowledge it, validate it, and bring comfort to that inner child. It's the best path towards healing that we can get. And then also forgiving ourselves, because it's often harder to forgive ourselves than it is to forgive another person. Again, because we are the wounded child and we are the inner critic. And so being able to slow down and recognize our strengths and what we went through, acknowledging that we did the very best that we could do at the time, inner child, giving that little love, that little time. Oh, honey, it's okay. I'm here for you now. I recognize that you did the best that you could. I understand that you're hurting. Please tell me what you're feeling and allow the feelings to come out. Name them, claim them, acknowledge them, validate them, and nurture those things. And then I think it's very important, especially for caregivers that are caring for someone who's hurt them, is to set boundaries. You set a boundary with your uncle, and you set boundaries with those people that are intrusive, or that are even with the person that you're caring for, being able to say, this is what I have to give today, and this is all I can give today, and not pick up the guilt and shame, to be able to honor yourself and acknowledge that it takes a lot of courage and compassion to care for someone who's hurt you. It takes a lot of care and compassion to encourage to care for someone who is going through a difficult time, that needs round the clock care or regular care. And to be able to acknowledge that you too need some time and respite for yourself. You not being the martyr, not allowing guilt and shame to drive the bus during the situation, to say, okay, this is what I'm able to do. This is what I'm willing to do. And this is what I'm not able to do and what I'm not willing to do. And being able to set those clear boundaries with that care, the person you're caring for, or the people around them. And that's loving ourselves, acknowledging ourselves, and giving ourselves empowerment. And that's very important on this journey, especially as a caregiver.
I really admire you, Anjalia, because of your life experiences and what you've been able to achieve. And you highlighted, like in your book, as you talk your life story, with you having experiencing life at a young age and having to figure things out on your own, and even going through therapy, learning forgiveness. What drove you during every obstacle? How did you make it to where you are today?
Talisa, I was cast out in the world, just catapulted out there on my own. And I first started out in survival mode. If it was going to be, it was up to me. And so I just needed to figure out how to get by day to day and what I needed to do. And being able to slow down enough to recognize that I needed an income, and what were the best ways to accomplish that, certainly in education. And then being able to, always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And so I started with what I had, a vacuum and some cleaning supplies, and started cleaning houses, and then learned about real estate investments and those things along the way. I think a lot of it, though, I'll be honest, it was it was my wounded self that was driving the motivation behind it, because I didn't ever want to end up back in the situation that I was in. And so for many years, Talisa, that wounded one, that one that just was in survival mode and in scarcity, really drove the bus of my life and helped me to just, actually, I became an overachiever and just really just trying to survive. But it was in midlife for me that I really, after I had accomplished all of my dreams, had overcome so many obstacles, became very successful as an entrepreneur, as a psychotherapist, that I was able to slow down enough to recognize that there was a deep pain within me that was still yearning for my attention, and that I had used so many things to cover up that wound, and including working, and alcohol was a big part of my healing. That was the thing that was self-soothing for me, and it was not working anymore, and I had to address the pain. And what I recognized is I was carrying a scarlet letter on my heart for giving up my child at such a young age, and her too, having gone through so many difficulties and traumas herself because I wasn't there. And I knew that I needed to address those things and to really get to the core of the wound within me and to forgive myself. And forgiving myself, like I said, was one of the most difficult things. But when you're able to slow down enough to recognize I was 13 years old when I got pregnant with her, and I ended up in a very abusive relationship that I only survived by leaving with my life. And I did the very best I could. And she had a lot of anger. My daughter had a lot of anger and resentment towards me. And so I knew I needed to go on this healing journey to get to the core of what was going on there. And once I was able to take the time to really slow down enough to recognize my inner wounds, those things that were triggered and that were hurting inside of me, the guilt and shame that was driving my life, when I was able to heal them, they no longer triggered me. And I was able to show up in the relationship with my daughter as a different person, was able to be available to her and to hear her and to listen to the wounds that she had endured and to just give her the time, love, and attention that she needed. And that's taken a lot of time. And only even just in the past year, her and I have begun that healing journey after I wrote the book. And she was able to recognize and see my growth through my own healing journey and to give me the time and the space and the opportunity to rebuild that relationship. And again, like I said, it's only been just really recent that's been able to occur. And so often, though, through forgiveness, we have to recognize that sometimes reconciliation, it does not happen, but forgiveness is the path to freedom.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful and very well said. And again, podcast family, there's so many beautiful golden nuggets that were dropped there. And it's something that you said really resonated with me. I need to go back to it because it's also something that I've talked with my therapist about, being very transparent and honest and open with you all. There was a part in my journey, stage of my journey, where I was very angry, very hurt, very angry. And you talked about that and you said you allowed those things to move you, help you move you forward. And what I've learned, and I'm going to share this with you just to piggyback off of that, it's okay to do that. You could take experiences, podcast family, that you've had that, let's say it wasn't the best, let's say that it produced anger, but if you can channel that anger or that negativity in a positive way to help pull you forward to achieve your goal, then that will be time well spent. And while you're doing that, I highly suggest that again you incorporate therapy with it to continue on your journey so that you can fully heal. But that's what you do. It's something that's great that you can do because that's something that can help pull you forward. And that's something, Angelia, that you stated that helped pull you forward. And I just love that. I love that.
But something else that was really essential as part of my journey is I was a big journaler. I wrote every day in my journal and really processed my feelings and allowed myself to feel them and be angry, to be hurt, to feel the pain and feel the shame and feel the guilt, recognize it and not beat myself up. Just recognize it, just acknowledge it. Gosh, I really feel hurt today. I really feel sad today. Oftentimes, resentment and pain comes from unprocessed grief. Oftentimes, we are just grieving what we've gone through, never have taken the time or had the opportunity because we were just in survival mode. And to be able to acknowledge that younger part of ourselves that did the very best that they could to get through and move through the difficulties. It's like reparenting ourselves with a loving mother, a kind and compassionate, caring person. And wow, that's so powerful and so empowering.
Yes, and that's wonderful that you said that. Podcast family, Angelia's book is very deep because not only did she experience her life, but she's been able to even use the lens of a psychotherapist while writing this all out. So the level of depth that she's been able channel through this and just the golden nuggets of wisdom all throughout her book, I sincerely believe that this is a must read. and it would be perfect for my caregivers. I'm constantly thinking about you all having experienced what it is to be a caregiver, and I understand that even though we take on so much, we still need time for ourselves. We still need time for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I've shared this with some other podcasts a while back. Something that's helped me, for an example, along my journey, I thought back to when I was in high school. And I believe this was around third hour, every day. All of the students, we had something called SSR, sustained silent reading.
Wow.
So for 15 minutes, everyone, it didn't matter if you were in band or if you were in history class or a drama class, whatever the case may be, every student was required to read for 15 minutes. And within that, you could bring your own book that you were able to read. And I would like to encourage you and challenge you to do is to incorporate 15 minutes each day, at least Monday through Friday, or start off with the weekend of sustained silent reading. And whatever you read, let it be a blessing to your spirit. Let it enrich your spirit. Let it be something that you can learn from and that you can incorporate. Your book, Anjalia, would be perfect for this because it allows you as a caregiver to get away and immerse yourself into someone else's story that has a very positive ending.
Yeah, one in my book, The Child I Left Behind, A Mother's Journey Toward Healing and Forgiveness, is a beautiful portrayal is what is possible no matter where you start, no matter what you've been through. There is always hope for a brighter future and you can heal no matter what you've been through. And this book mirrors so many things that people go through, the difficulties, the challenges, the heartache, the hurt, the pain, and ultimately forgiveness. And it walks the reader through everything that I went through and mirrors back the things that they themselves are going through to show you how that you can get through these things no matter where you start.
Again, beautifully said. Let's talk about where we can find your book.
You can check out my book at AnjaliaMcGoldrick.com or Amazon.com. It carries The Child I Left Behind, A Mother's Journey Towards Healing and Forgiveness. It's an international award-winning book, and I just really encourage you to pick it up. I think you're going to find many nuggets of wisdom in there, and it will actually mirror a lot of things that you've gone through and help you on your healing path.
Did y'all hear that? Podcast family, internationally award winning book. So I'm telling you, it's good. You heard it from me. It's won awards. And not only that, but the information that Angelia just shared will be in the description of this episode, including the link, because I like to make it very easy for the podcast family to just be able to find the resources that they need. So, this book, again, would be a great resource for you. And I would encourage you to incorporate 15 minutes a day, just reading and learning, because through this conversation, through this episode, I'm sure that we've been able to share many golden nuggets of wisdom with you to hopefully help you along your journey as you continue to care for your loved ones and you deal with challenges as it pertains to forgiveness.
Talisa, I was wondering if I could leave just a couple little tips and tools for your listeners. Is there time?
Yes, please.
What I'd like to share in closing is that forgiveness is an invitation to stop the pain and to begin to live in wholeness in your truth, which is so essential for our inner children, for our little inner wounded children inside of us. The first thing when you begin on the healing journey of forgiveness is to first recognize where you're hurting or what the pain is that's inside of you. Name it, name the burden, name what you're carrying. Recognize who hurt you. Spell out their name, say it, acknowledge that. And then take responsibility for what is yours. What happened there? Were you too young to take on whatever happened? Just take responsibility for what is yours and then also write what was not yours and give that back to that person, even metaphysically. Just say, I'm no longer carrying this for you. Also, finding some compassion for yourself, recognizing that you survived, that you got through an awful lot. Oftentimes, we never slow down to give ourselves credit for the difficulties that we went through. Spell them out, name them, write down what you went through and what you survived. Allow yourself some space for grief. So often we don't recognize that we're really grieving the loss of our childhood, the loss of the pain, loss of the parent or someone that we had hopes that were going to care for us. So recognizing that grief and pain, and then offering yourself just self-compassion and love and acceptance of where you are, no matter where it is, whether you're in anger or pain, guilt, shame, recognize it, acknowledge it. It validates that inner child. And then take some time to engage in self care. That little inner child needs your love and attention. Asking them, what is it that you didn't get that you were needing? Was it time spent with someone that you loved? Was it time to play? Was it time to be nurtured and cared for? And then do that for yourself. Reparent yourself with that love and compassion. Take your little one out for ice cream if that's what she was needing. Go to the park and play. Get some art supplies and draw and let her color and paint. Do those things regularly and often, and journal as often as you can. Anytime you're triggered, it's not about the other person. It's always your inner wounded child calling you back to itself, asking you for its time and attention to be acknowledged, validated, and understood. And when you can do that, will begin your path toward healing and forgiveness.
Woo! I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Anjalia, you have me over here clapping. Thank you so much for that. It's been, it has been a blessing to have you on as a guest on Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast. Thank you so much again for everything that you shared, your wisdom, your story. Again, podcast family, you'll be able to find all of this information in the description of this episode, including the links to purchase Anjalia McGoldrick's book. So thank you. And podcast family, until next time.